has nothing to do with someone's political ideology, which I didn't even know about.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know about his political ideology. We were not talking about that. But what we are talking about, because you keep bringing up the black athletes who ESPN chastises. It's not just Stephen A. either. It's across the spectrum. It's across sports media. Skip Bayless has made an entire living for 2 decades hating on LeBron. Is that hating on a black athlete for either misbehavior or just playing poorly is a commodity. And we have to understand that. Hating on the black athlete and chastising and condemning black athletic misbehavior is a commodity. It is clicks. It is capitalism. It is the way you make money. And as long as that hate and that capitalism and that money and that profit collide, you're going to get more of the same. And the opposite is true if you go after Dana White, where you're hurting your own product.
In fact, Chuck, actually, I have this tweet to share as well. This actually goes into what you were just saying. Slack on both sides says Dana White clapped his wife on camera in broad daylight, and he still has a Nike deal. Yep. So, I mean, it really goes into show that there is really just a double standard, especially when it comes to race. And we got to remember that when it comes to black people in the country, really in the West, race and class are intertwined.
Yes.
Because most black people are also part of the lower class or lower middle class in this country because of the racial disparities that we see in this country, which is due to capitalism. So really, the capitalism and white supremacy go hand in hand. And this actually shows and sheds a light on that, saying that Dana White still has a Nike deal. It's like, what about the deals for people who actually are black, who got vitriol from the press? What about them? Do they still have their deals? Have they been dropped? Should they be picked back up again?
Yeah, Kaepernick lost his endorsements. Kyrie had also lost a couple endorsements, even though he came back and apologized. By the way, I want to remind people, Kyrie didn't hit anyone. Kyrie put a link to an Amazon a video offered through Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. And by the way, I have not watched the documentary. You have to pay for it.
Yeah.
You have to pay for it. I haven't watched it, but people I've spoken to that did watch it, they said that it wasn't necessarily what the media was saying it was. So I don't know. I'd have to check it out. But like I said, they're charging like $40 for you to watch that documentary, which is ridiculous.
And
instead
$49.99 actually.
But notice there wasn't that same type of outrage towards Amazon for having the video.
There wasn't. There really, really was. And it's funny, if you had paid for the documentary, 50% would have gone to Jeff Bezos. You know, $25 would have gone to Jeff Bezos. So the fact that it moved to Amazon and Bezos is making the money and they're still talking about Kyrie tells you it wasn't really about anti-Semitism. That's what it tells you, because you would have moved on. You would have moved on to the person.
Right. Like Bryce said that Shaq showed in one of his theaters. Right. Shaq showed the movie in one of his movie theaters. Shaq does own movie theaters. He showed the movie in one of his movie theaters. But Shaq also demonized Kyrie.
Yeah.
You see how this works? They all got in line. At the end of the day, all of them, Shaq, Stephen A. Smith, Charles Barkley, all of them got in line and said, yeah, we need to take down Kyrie. We need to get on him for this one. But look how much kinder they are towards people like Brett Favre. They didn't give Brett Favre enough heat, in my opinion. This man stole millions of dollars from poor black people.
Yeah. And they still haven't given Brett Favre enough. But to your point on anti-Semitism, I've said for a few years now, the biggest story of anti-Semitic story that was absolutely covered up, or one day story, was when Bernie was running for president, there were swastikas at his rally, that the banner was unfurled with a swastika. And then there was another swastika outside his headquarters. And these were one-day stories at best and barely shown. And at the very same time this was happening, because it was the wrong Jew that happened to. It wasn't about anti-Semitism. This was Bernie Sanders, a Jewish person who was critiquing Palestine at the time. So that was glossed over. If anti-Semitism is important to you, and a man running for president is getting swastikas at his rallies. Don't you think that's important to cover? Don't you think that's important to talk about and educate the populace? That did not happen. So we're selective often in what we go after and we don't go after. And when I see over and over they're trying to make black athletes and entertainers the face of anti-Semitism, I have to say I don't really think this is about anti-Semitism, even though within there are some legitimate critiques. I think we're talking about racism disguising about anti-Semitism, because I know there are all these other ways that we can talk about anti-Semitism more responsibly and not conflate the issue.
Oh, and absolutely, Chuck, because one of the biggest anti-Semitic issues I see is the proxy war in Ukraine. Yeah. That is a massive anti-Semitic action that we see on behalf of the United States government. We're literally giving billions of dollars in weapons to Nazis in Ukraine, and you mean to tell me the entire Jewish community hasn't been in uproar? You mean to tell me that the entire... Now, there are some people, Jewish people, who are in uproar about this. I'm going to make myself clear. But when it comes to the media is not showing this. They're not saying this is anti-Semitic. Why are you guys supporting these Nazis in Ukraine?
Yeah.
Because there are some people who are Jewish who are looking at this with the proxy war and they're going, wait, what are you doing? Because they're literally giving weapons to our enemies, people who want us dead.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, like, if the United States government, if the Biden regime actually wants to support Jewish people, they would not be supporting NATO giving weapons to people in Ukraine, to these Nazis in Ukraine, to like the Azov battalion and other battalions that are supportive of this.
Bryant said, thank you for this, Bryant. He said, this dynamic has been going on since Jackie Robinson, Jack Johnson, Ali, etc. continued to call out these anti-Black commentators. Yeah, there's been a long history of this. And Chuck, I'm sure if you remember the football player Josh, he was the one that kept getting removed because of marijuana.
Gordon.
Josh Gordon, yeah,
correct.
Because he was with the Patriots. He was with us last, the Patriots.
Yeah.
And he was another one, heavily demonized. And I'm like, it's weed.
Yeah, he had an addiction problem, but it's weed. And it's exactly right. And, you know, I've sort of been really covering media for a couple decades now. And there was a 5-year period that Forbes was doing a survey. And who are the most hated people in sports? Right. And I have all the data and I could probably put it together, but I'll give you the summary. In this 5-year period that they were doing this survey, nearly everyone on the list was Black. Almost everyone in the top 5, top 3 were Black. And what was so interesting is it didn't matter whether it was criminal behavior or not. So you might have Michael Vick and Tiger Woods and Terrell Owens all at the top, right? You know, so one is infidelity, one is a crime, one Terrell Owens never committed a crime. He's just not liked. But what happens is media keeps pushing, and I blame media first and foremost because they keep pushing Black athlete misbehavior as a commodity, and it keeps getting clicks. So you didn't think to put Ben Roethlisberger on the list? Why was Ben Roethlisberger gone from your list after he had a rape allegations, right?
2.
And you could go down a list. Brett Favre, the new story you hear is part of a long history of scandal, by the way. So this is what sports media is about, and we have to understand that in that light. And I do believe, and you know, I'd have to talk a lot longer on this, but I'll give you the summary. I do believe there is a relationship between how sports media treats the Black athlete and mass incarceration, and that meaning you deserve your punishment. We don't have to fix this. That media has an incredible platform in shaping white attitudes towards Black America in ways that even beyond the news, that's beyond everything, because sports hits everyone. So it's by design, it's profitable, and it has very harmful consequences.
This is also the reason why. Oh, go ahead, JB.
Well, no, I was going to ask, as far as the media is concerned, remember when Laura Abrams told... Am I still here?
You're still here. You're about to talk about shut up and dribble.
Okay. Okay. Remember when Lauren Ingram told LeBron James to shut up and dribble? But oh my God, he plays for the Saints, quarterback.
Drew Brees.
When Drew Brees had a political opinion, then Lauren was like, well, he should be able to express his political opinion because he is a citizen, and citizens have political opinions. It's like, wait a minute, you told LeBron to shut up and dribble when he said his political opinion, but Drew Brees can say his political opinion. I'm sorry, racist much? And so it's like this double standard that comes across whenever it comes to people who are disenfranchised in the media, because people like him have such a big platform. They don't want them to say a word, but the moment someone expresses it for a more pro-capitalist, white supremacist, or right-wing view, then it's like, okay, you can say whatever you want.
Right.
Yep.
And sport, what's more political in sports? I can't go to see a football game without seeing military troops being honored during the national anthem. That's political.
Yep.
Spending half of our budget on the military to kill people all around the world is political. So now when Kaepernick wants to stand up for racial justice, stand up for cops that kill, that they be held accountable, oh, we don't want that kind of politics. So we're not really talking whether it's political, because sports is inherently political. It's jingoistic. It's patriotic. It's a tool used by the empire. It just depends what your politics are.
Yep. 100%. 100%. And I think too, this is just something that if you haven't paid attention to it before, there's a reason why people like Michael Jordan, other than his talent, there's a reason why Michael Jordan was beloved by so many people besides his talent. Michael Jordan did not speak up against social injustice, against these any type of like political like issues. He didn't speak out about that. When you heard from Michael Jordan, he talked about basketball. He probably would talk about his family every now and then, but he would not touch those issues. And even Michael Jordan said later on that looking back on it, he wished he would have been vocal, but he knew what would have happened if he did.
That's right. It would have cost him a whole lot of money. And, you know, to your point, a great book that I love is The Heritage by Howard Bryan. Howard Bryan is an incredible writer, and he talks about the black athlete and activism going back to Paul Robeson fighting Jim Crow in the 1940s all the way up till now. So he does address Jordan, and he calls it the triumvirate of O.J. Jordan and Tiger Woods at this period of general silence before that starts to change in the last decade. You know, after Trayvon Martin, you start to see a big change in that area. And he really dissects that in a brilliant way. So anybody listening, I'll say, you know, pick up that book. It's a great one.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring up, before Sabby leaves, I wanted to bring up your tweet. This is the tweet that actually got me and Sabby talking. This is one of the reasons why we invited you on. You say, how the F do they know if Dana White hitting his wife was, quote, isolated incident, end quote, a line he never crossed before. This love fest is most pathetic water-carrying journalistic malpractice for a corporate partner I've ever seen. Then you give the examples. I love him. I had the most respect for him. I don't judge people by their worst moment. He is a friend. I love him. I just wish the best for him and his family. He has a beautiful family. This is not how ESPN depicts black athletes who hit women. By the way, there's an upcoming UFC fight on ESPN Plus.
That's right. This past Saturday. And, you know, so I talked about something, but I want to talk about one line, and Molly said it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think Chuck froze for a second.
Mm-hmm.
He'll come back.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a telling sign. It's something that we've seen. Okay, go ahead, Chuck.
I was going to say there's something that Molly said that I both agree with and disturbed me. And she said, I don't want to judge people on the worst day. Now, I think that's actually a good sentiment. I actually believe that. I think too much, especially Twitter, we judge people on their worst day or the worst tweet. I've tweeted or said things a couple of years ago. I'm like, what was I thinking? You know, that was the dumbest thing ever. So we need to get away from that and judge people on their record. Otherwise, you know, we're all bad because we all mess up and we make mistakes. So I'm very empathetic to that point of view. The problem is ESPN absolutely judges people on their worst day. They absolutely judge black athletes on their worst day. They judge them by their worst day and sometimes only by their worst day. So for you to come on and make an exception on your entire business model for Dana White, I have a problem with that. Though your sentiment was a good sentiment, but you don't start that sentiment with Dana White, because I've been watching ESPN for a couple decades and all you do is judge people on their worst day.